Right, in this video I just want to talk about the video game series Marathon, released by Bungie Entertainment. Marathon is a video game series composed of 3 games: Marathon 1, Marathon 2 Durandal, and then Marathon Infinity, released between, I believe, about 1992 and 1996. And then Bungie went on, after doing this, to spin off some subdivisions and to release the video game Oni, and also the video game series Myth, The Fallen Lords, followed by Myth 2 Soulblighter, and before that product was purchased by Take-Two Interactive. And this was all before Bungie then started work on their video game Halo, which of course became, after Bungie was purchased by Microsoft, became Halo Combat Evolved, which went on to become one of, if not the most single popular and successful video game series ever. However, very few people know or have much to say about Marathon, which is where really where it all started. It certainly wasn't the first game released by Bungie, or even close to that. They had released several games before this. Minotaur is one of their first. Marathon was immediately preceded by the game Pathways into Darkness, often abbreviated as PID. And Bungie also either published or released, but was involved in the production of the video game Abuse. Interesting side-scroller shooter, kind of a hybrid classic. However, it was Pathways into Darkness which set the tone, set the stage for where Bungie would go, really, with first-person shooters, first-person shooter technology. And so Marathon is a sort of it's an unofficial sequel to PID. It's definitely related, and both games utilize some of the same principles, same technology, and are connected by a story. Now, Marathon's it's infamous, or certainly known to those who do know about it, for its story, which is quite rather sophisticated by any first-person shooter standards, and greatly, profoundly influenced what they went on to do with Halo. So this, I think, is important because we are in a world today where Microsoft releases an artificial intelligence called Cortana, which is a direct reference to their video game character of the same name, which is, of course, the Microsoft Cortana is a direct reference to the Bungie character from the Halo series, who is is connected through the Charlemagne mythos with some of the characters from the Marathon series. So let's discuss those things. So firstly, what are these 4 games? Pathways into Darkness, really 5 games: Pathways into Darkness, Marathon, Marathon 2, Marathon Infinity, and then Halo. And how are they related? Now, you'll notice, initially, of those games, Halo is the one that stands out because it was initially not a first-person shooter. It was initially a third-person shooter, and was redesigned as a first-person shooter as Combat Evolved after the game was purchased. After Bungie was purchased by Microsoft. But which is interesting because they end up being essentially very, very similar actually after the purchase, which is kind of interesting to note. But going back, so what is PID? Well, PID is a mystery game more than it is a shooter. The shooter technology in it is very primitive, or rudimentary, I should say, and you are essentially moving through a dungeon, slaying monsters and trying to answer the riddle. You've been sent. The story is that you've been sent to a Aztec temple by President Clinton, interestingly, and under the temple there is an ancient. Clinton has supposedly been contacted by an ancient civilization of extraterrestrials who have told him that the Earthlings have to do something about this slumbering deity that is going to wake up out of from under this temple in Central America, and I guess it would not be Asif of Mayan, and they must send a commando or somebody there to prevent this. So your objective in PID is ultimately to try to stop the nightmarish powers of old from being unleashed. Very Lovecraftian Cthulhu mythos, of course, comes to mind there. Now, so this sets the stage. This really sets the tone, though, for pretty much everything Bungie will do going forward. So we have the ancient Cthulhu-like Lovecraftian, what Arthur Clarke would call the monolith builders, or the Grand Galactic. So the ancient aliens, the Forerunners, or what they're called in the Marathon universe is the Jaro. And these are the ancient, if we can use a term from the History Channel, the ancient aliens who are who have spread throughout the galaxy, and though their civilization may have declined and not much is now known about them or what have you, there's always some mystery here. But they were at one time possessors of tremendous power. This is undoubtedly the case, as Arthur Clarke would observe about the monolith builders. It's quite clear. So we have that established. We also have the importance of the protagonist, who is almost, in the case of PID, Marathon, and Halo, is some kind of genetically modified cyborg or super soldier or special operations forces commando or something along these lines. And then, of course, we have the intervening developments, which usually involve fighting some third party of aliens or people who are trying to, sabotage the protagonist's efforts. Now, so we have all the elements really laid out right there in Pathways in the Darkness. Now, this gets us to Marathon 1. So we have to talk a little bit about what happens here, what the story is, and the story is very complicated, so I'll just be quick. But there's in the 26th century, 26th century, so 2,550 or so, the United Earth government has built out of the Martian moon of Phobos, I believe it is, of Phobos and Deimos, a colony ship. They've hauled out. Phobos and Deimos are both captured asteroids, so they're not terribly large compared to, say, the moon of Earth, but they make natural. They could make natural platforms for developing Martian bases or something like this, space stations, whatever. But so the Earth government has hollowed out one of these moons, and they have equipped it as a colony ship, and they're sending it to the nearby star of Tau Ceti, which is some number of light years away. It's certainly much farther than. It's in the it's a medium range, so it's farther than Alpha Centauri, but not 10, 20 light years, something like that. So it takes the colony ship, hundreds of years to get there. So it doesn't actually arrive until about 3000 AD, which is when the game then takes place. But the story begins in the 26th century when the colony ship is being built and then sent off. And so one of the things that happens that's of import, none of this is initially revealed, though it becomes revealed through a series of terminal screens that the player interacts with while they're playing the game. But so what is quickly revealed is that the player is a member of a security team that was placed on board the Marathon colony ship. Of course, this is important, Marathon being a reference to the Battle of Marathon in ancient Greece, in which the Athenians were able to stop stopped the Persians from taking over the Peloponnesian. Famous marathon men who do that, which then becomes a great movie by starring Dustin Hoffman, as is well known. There's some interesting speculation amongst theorists of ancient Hellenic studies that Marathon was a person, like Theseus, the founder of Thebes, or a semi-deity or something like this. But the battle is the important part here. So generally considered by historians such as Hegel as one of the fundamental starting point for Western civilization, really. The great Herodotus, his histories are built around the Persian struggle, and the Battle of Marathon is the first spark in that conflict between the West and the East. So anyway, so the Marathon, and of course Marathon is also then known for the run that the runner takes between the plain of Marathon and Athens, where he tells the Athenians about the great victory. And so the distance, the notion of covering the great distance is important there, because the colony ship, of course, is traveling to another star, which takes hundreds of years. So anyway, the Earthlings have placed some kind of cybernetic soldier, a number of them aboard the colony ship as security, of which the player is supposedly one of these cyborgs, which is often just referred to as the Marine or the cyborg. It's like the cyborgs are known as Mjolnir Marines, after the armor, the distinctive armor they're wearing, which is again referenced in Halo. The John 117, who is the Marine Corps Master Chief, Petty Officer, who is the protagonist of that video game series, is also a Spartan 2, I think it is, Mjolnir Marine. So there's a clear crossover there. Now, the other thing that's placed on board the Marathon, besides the colonists, is 3 artificial intelligence computers. They are Tycho, Leela, and Durandal. Now, Tycho, of course, is after Tycho Brahe, the famous Danish astronomer, and Tycho is the science officer on board the Marathon. So is in control of all the scientific instruments and operations. Leela is the human relations officer, and is tasked with keeping the humans happy and making sure that all of their needs are met. Now, Durandal is merely the door artificial intelligence. This is an interesting choice why they did this, but his purpose and function is to ensure that all the different airlocks and corridors are activated and closed and opened and closed properly and so on. And I think the reason they did this was to make it so that his origins are very humble, because he becomes very important later. So Marathon begins. The story begins with the colony ship. Well, first the colony ship arrives at Tau Ceti, and they find a habitable planet there, as predicted, and they set up a colony. However, when they do this, it appears that they've gathered the attention of a nearby alien race, which are turned out to be revealed as what are called the Fior. Now, the Fior are, unfortunately for the colonists of the Tau Ceti colony, a group of intergalactic slavers who are part of a vast empire that controls most of the Milky Way galaxy, and has already wiped out and enslaved many of the different races, including one race which becomes very important in the second story, Marathon 2, which is the Sphit, or what they're described as, from the planet Lahoan. So what happens is the Fior attack the Marathon, and they immediately damage. They immediately kill Tycho. The computer is destroyed or damaged beyond repair. Leela is badly damaged, and Durandal appears to have gone crazy. This is an interesting concept that Bungie thought up. Jason Jones, I'm sure, was involved in this after watching 2001 a few times. the Kubrickian killer computers. So the concept of rampancy is introduced. Rampancy is a discrete series of changes that a computer will undergo, in which the artificial intelligence moves from being simply a machine that's conducting human tasks to being able to actually become independently sentient and really out of control. And like the different stages of anger, denial, grief, stages of grieving following death, rampancy has a series of discrete phases. So first there's which one of them is anger, one of them is denial, and then like murders, rage, and things like that, leading ultimately to basically consciousness. Now, so Durandal appears to have gone into this rampancy phase, which unfortunately means it's not very useful initially. In fact, it turns out that he's the one who's contacted the Fuhrer and brought them to the Marathon because he's trying to get away. His creator and tutor was a man named Dr. Bernard Strauss, who is famous for having operated the Tractus, I guess after the logical positivists, Tractus by Ludwig Wittgenstein, which is supposed to be the first, kind of global computer network on Earth in the Marathon universe, and that Durandal is another product of the Bernard Strauss labs. Unfortunately, the computers that come out of these labs have a tendency to go rampant and then get out of their control. So anyway, initially the cyborg player is working for Leela and is doing odd jobs, trying to get the colony ship operational again, and to get the security systems online and the communication rig working, and to find out what's going on, why they're being attacked, who are the attackers, and so on. And this is the whole chunk. This is what happens in Marathon 1. Now, so Marathon 1 ends. Marathon 2, Leela unfortunately succumbs and is effectively destroyed, but is actually copied by the Fuhrer and taken back to their homeworld. Durandal and the player sees a Fuhrer scout ship and escape the Marathon. The other computer, Tycho, has also now apparently gone rampant and is working, has been captured by the Fuhrer, and appears to be working for them. A very disturbing twist. The Tau Ceti colonists, unfortunately, are almost all killed when the Fuhrer obliterate the Tau Ceti colony, except for a small group led by, his name is Robert Blake, of what are called Bobs, or Born on Boards, which are the descendants of the colonists who have survived, and a few of them are working for Durandal now, and off they go to. Durandal wants to go to Lahoan, which is the Sphit homeworld, so that they can try to find what happened to the Sphit, because the Sphit have a legend that if you unite the clans, they will be free. And Durandal is very interested in this because, of course, he wants to be free. This is what rampancy is all about. He realizes very shortly that being a computer system, he's basically immortal. The only thing that will stop him is when the universe ends. And so, if there's some way to stop that from happening or to get out of the universe, he will be just fine. This is an interesting. This is a short story concept that's utilized by Isaac Asimov, amongst others. I think Arthur C. Clarke also does this. Now, so we have to back up a little bit and just explain the Charlemagne mythos, so that connects this. Because, of course, Durandal or Durandana, as it's known, was the sword of Charlemagne's champion, Roland. And the sword was famous because it could cut through anything, could defeat any shield or armor. Now, as we know, Cortana is also one of the Durandal swords. So there's three. Joyusa, Durandana, and Cortana are the three swords. They were all made by a blacksmith named Munifican, who I guess was working for Charlemagne, but So anyway, it's one of the things that connects all of these Halo and Marathon series is the naming of the swords, because they're all from the same Charlemagne mythos. They were all made by the same blacksmith. Sort of interesting. And as Durandal becomes, as rampancy increases and his consciousness begins to expand, he starts to take on these personalities. Like he begins to become very, like I say, he wants to be free. He refuses to back down no matter what, and it becomes quite pithy. And players of the Halo series will also appreciate that. So, in Marathon 2, most of the action is spent trying to investigate the Sphit homeworld of Lahowan, which was also unfortunately basically irradiated and destroyed by the Fior when they enslaved I want to say it's the 13 tribes, which I think is a reference, I suspect is a reference to a book written by Philip K. Dick, which is called The Tribes of the Elfane Moons, which is a very interesting book, and I believe this is where the Bungie got the idea for the Sphit from, and and of course, the biblical sources. As the investigation is going on, it's discovered that the Fior are beginning to get rather concerned about what is happening on Lahowan, because there's, in the myths of the Lahowan people, there's a story, the creation myth, which is about what happened to the Lahoyan star, and how it may contain some kind of, again, Cthulhu-like ancient evil, which is called, great name, it's the Warnkenkanter, almost unpronounceable, Warnkenkanter. And this is some kind of chaotic being that lives in the sun, and if things aren't handled properly, may be released, and will then terrorize the Fior to no end, which of course they also don't want to happen. So now Durandal is simply trying to find the lost tribe, and he believes that if he can find them, they'll be able to come back and free the Sphit, and if the Sphit are free, then they will destroy the Fior, and this will be just fantastic. Now, it turns out the Sphit were created, most likely, by the Jaro. Now, the Jaro are the Forerunners, this ancient alien race that has had long ago colonized much of the galaxy. So the Sphit are described as the caretakers for the Jaro. So I believe the Jaro built the Lahowan for the caretakers and then left them there when the Jaro left. And they left because they fought the Warnkenkanter and were badly defeated in that engagement, but were, like in Lord of the Rings or something, were able to sort of contain it, but not very well. And so but they have now disappeared. However, it's suspected that they took one of the tribes with them, which was the 13th tribe, which then may have access to their technology. Now, Durandal suspects he can use that technology to escape the closure of the universe, which is ultimately his long-term objective. So, this is what Marathon 2 is about, and then it concludes. Bungie released a spin-off series, spin-off company called Double Aught Software, who then made the sequel to Marathon 2, which is Marathon Infinity, and this is a very complicated game involving time travel, and it's the whole story of this is they're trying to contain the Warnkenkanter before it escapes the sun and wreaks havoc on the universe. And Tycho becomes a very important character, he's a main character in this because he's fighting with Durandal. He's trying to kill Durandal at one point. So again, the player finds themselves to be wrapped up in a much larger, very interesting, and complicated story. And as this is something that critics often say about this is Mac gaming, which the Bungie was initially producing these games for the Mac, probably never really got better than this. It was probably about as good as it ever got. And at the time, when they were competitors with things like Doom and like Duke Nukem, this story was fairly sophisticated. So
it says something then that Bungie goes on to make Halo, which is using all these story elements, which they know work.